I think, as I mentioned, I think an invitation to talk about the professor, Prashant Chandra Mahalanobis. If I turn it down, I think I can never live with myself again. I think that's be impossible to live that down. So I had to accept. So it's a tremendous amount of work to really put together a biographical talk, and there's a lot of material online, and to pare it down in such a short time is not very easy. That's what I found out. But nevertheless, I had a fantastic time. So I want to thank Raghavan, of course, for inviting me to do that, so giving me this opportunity. Neetu for organizing the Wednesday talks as usual, and Jayashankar. I think I had some brief discussions with Jayashankar, our media Jayashankar, brief discussions with him about the structure of the slides, etc., image, how to clip images and so on. That was extremely useful. So what I did is, let us just Google the National Statistics Day. So this is the result of Googling the word, the phrase National Statistics Day. So in fact, get about 11 pages like that. I only displayed only 8 pages, 11 pages of images like this if you Google, and almost every page has the same person's picture, okay? Every page. And this is sort of unique. If you, for example, let me ask you a question, I think. So if you, for example, say Google National Physics Day, for example, National Physics Day, whose picture do you think is going to show up in that, in the Google? Whose picture you'll end up in the search thing? So can you launch that first first question? Can you question? So you have a question, right? So if you think it is C.V. Raman, right? If you say it is C.V. Raman, you can choose option A. Okay. If you think it is someone else, you can select option B. So can you describe? Yeah. So option A, C.V. Raman. Option B, someone else, say S.N. Bose. Let us say is another physicist, S.N. Bose, and someone else. It will be other. Okay, so tell me, who do you think is going to show up? If I say, if we just National Physics Day, right? Who do you think? Go ahead. A, C.V. Raman, B, Bose, and C, anybody else? Other. Okay, close. The poll station is ably handled by Ramesh and Neetu. Yeah, please. 63%. So you actually, yes, you are right. You are going to see C.V. Raman, but not nearly in as many pictures as Mahalanobis picture, the one picture you saw, right? It's there in every other picture. In fact, I think C.V. Raman's birthday is not National Physics Day. It turns out that the day when the day of discovery of Raman effect is actually declared as a National Physics Day, which is a joint result between him and his student called Krishnan, okay? And so happens that was done in Calcutta, right? So a lot of connection to Calcutta. So that is the case. And if you, for example, you say National Chemistry Day, similarly there is a well-known chemist, and his picture is not there in everywhere. For example, National Psychology Day, I think our faculty in psychology faculty should make a note of it. If you say National Psychology Day, there is hardly any Indian reference showing up. In fact, most of even the pictures seem to be taken from abroad only. So, are there Indian psychologists of reputation who you want to really market? You should think about this. So, let's go back to this thing. So, who is this person who is showing up in National Statistics? He is an undisputed king of statistics, nothing doing. He is it. If you are talking about National Statistics Day, it has to be relating to this person. Who is this person? Right? He is actually a contemporary of all these people. He actually lived more or less around the same time. His birthday is more or less same as these people. Homi Bhabha, Meghnad Saha, he's I think he's a physicist actually, and Vishwesvaraya, he is an engineer from Karnataka, and National Engineers Day is actually on his birthday. And he is another person who shows up a lot when you are doing a search on National Engineers Day. S.N. Bose, I sort of mentioned, he is a physicist, right? So he is the other person who could be associated with physics. And C.V. Raman, of course, well known. And as I mentioned to you, that out of these people, I think actually I have not seen any picture of Mahalanobis interacting with Vishwesvaraya. I have seen pictures of him. Homi Bhabha actually visited ISI, and Meghnad Saha and S.N. Bose were actually his friends in Calcutta. And C.V. Raman, I have not seen pictures. It is quite possible that they have not interacted. I need to actually check with my friends, because in a very interesting way, C.V. Raman and Mahalanobis, they might have had very differing views about certain things, especially political views. It's quite possible, okay? Because C.V. Raman is actually, when he got his Bharat Ratna award, and later on, when the second 5-year plan, which Mahalanobis was the architect, during that time, C.V. Raman was very unhappy with the Nehru strategy of investment in scientific research. So he actually broke his Bharat Ratna award in protest. So he has very strong views against Nehru, who was a friend of Mahalanobis. So, a lot of connections. Okay, so here is a person that we are going to talk about today. This is Prashanta Chandra Mahalanobis. He is considered to be father of Indian statistics. He was born on June 29, 1893 and passed away one day before his 79th birthday. Okay, one day before his 79th birthday. And so I, just for reference, arrived in Calcutta in 1977. So 5 years after PCM passed away. So I think, like many regrets in my life, like having not met Gurudev and having not met PCM is a regret, right? So I wish I had a chance to see him, but I did see his wife. Okay. So why is a big deal? He is if you just look at his resume, there is nothing, nor award that he has not gotten. Weldon Medal from Oxford University, Fellow of Royal Society, not Statistical Society, Royal Society. He was president of Indian Science Congress. He was a Fellow of Econometric Society. He was a Fellow of Pakistan Statistical Association. Right? Remember that he actually, his family is from Bangladesh. So originally his family moved from Bangladesh to a place in Calcutta, and we'll see. So, honorary Fellow of Royal Statistical Society. He has several gold medals, including Devi Prasad Sarvadika. I don't even know who gives this one out, possibly some Calcutta organization. Foreign member of Academy of Sciences of USSR. He has strong connections between he had made strong connections between himself and many other organizations around the world. Honorary Fellow of King's College and Officer of the Order of the British Empire. This is one of the highest honors anybody from the Commonwealth nations can get. One of the highest things. Fellow of American Statistical Association, Durga Prasad Khaitan Gold Medal, Srinivasa Ramanujan Gold Medal. This is actually given to a mathematician. And Mahalanobis is not a mathematician, he is a statistician. His work involves mathematics, but he will not call himself a mathematician, but he was given this award. He was awarded Padma Vibhushana in 1968. In 1993, a commemorative stamp was brought out. And in 2018, during his 125th birth anniversary, Indian government minted a 5 rupee coin to honor him. So this is Mahalanobis commemorative coin. So this is the kind of accolades he has received during this time is an amazing thing. In fact, I'm actually surprised that he is not a Bharat Ratna. So, where did it all begin? So, he was born on June 29, 1893, as I mentioned. He was born in Calcutta in a house of his that owned by his grandfather in a place called, on a street called Cornwallis Street. Okay, it is in central Calcutta. And his father's name was Prabodh Chandra. His grandfather's name was Guru Charan. His father's name was Prabodh Chandra. His father is the second son of his grandfather. And his mother's name is Nirod Bhashini. And theirs was a very prominent Brahmo family. In fact, those of you who are aware of this Brahmo movement, you can see the who's who. The Mahalanobis family people were either president, secretary or something or the other during the entire time of Brahmo movement. Okay? Brahmo movement was started by a person called Rajaram Mohan Roy, and he was connected to this family also. They were very good friends. And this family had a strong connection with the Tagore family throughout. In fact, Mahalanobis' father, Prabodh Chandra, he had a business of importing recording equipment and the phonographs and things like that, right? So he was very, he was bringing some technology from outside. He helped record Rabindranath Tagore's voice for the first time. Actually, he was the one who arranged it. So that is how close and how influential and how connected they are to the Tagore family. His mother, Nirod Bhashini's brother, his name is Neel Ratan Sarkar, and he was a very well-known educationist. So there was also this education thing running in his family. So he was entrepreneurship, education and so on, and you will see that eventually he became the combination of all these things: management skills, entrepreneurship and strong academic skills. So he is from an aristocratic family. He had an aristocratic upbringing and an aristocratic childhood and an aristocratic education. So in Calcutta, if you are from a family like this, your end goal is to get a degree from London, and of course he achieved it. So he went to a Brahmo boys school close by, and he went to his got his undergraduate degree in physics from Presidency College, which is part of Calcutta University. And once he graduated, he went to England. And in England, to get into King's College, you have to write exams called tripos. Okay? And he wrote tripos in mathematics and physics. So in the physics tripos, he topped the whole chart. He was number one. He became number one, and he ended up getting a 80 pounds a year scholarship for going to college in King's College. So he got a degree. He graduated from Cambridge. So in 1923, he married this person, Nirmal Kumari Moitra, right? So it turns out that she is also from the Brahmo family, and her father, Heramba Chandra Moitra, was a very prominent Brahmo follower, but he was very, very strict, very strict. And so he was very strict. He was doing a very strict interpretation of being a Brahmo. For example, he was against smoking and against drinking and so on. So Mahalanobis didn't quite subscribe to that strong views. Therefore, her father was actually against her marrying him. So he refused to attend the wedding. And remember, I told you that Mahalanobis' uncle Neel Ratan Sarkar actually was the one who gave the bride away, right? He attended the wedding on behalf of her father, right? After getting married, they went and got the blessings from Tagore, right? So they were very connected, so there's something that was, right? So that is the beginning, and so you will see that in 1915, he wrote the exam like IAS, Administrative Service, Indian Education Service. He got into the Indian Education Service. So once you needed to get this Indian Education Service for you to become a principal or one of those things. So this is one of those things that, it's a British India, remember. So you have to get certified. And he started at the same time as a lecturer in Presidency College. So Calcutta University, one of the colleges in Calcutta University. And in 1922, he became an assistant professor. And if you remember, in 1923, he got married. So like a very good boy, he waited until he got his assistant professorship, and then he got married, right? And then I think after a few years after that, he became a principal of Presidency College, and he actually retired in 1948. And it may be because I think that by that time he already had founded Indian Statistical Institute, and maybe somebody from Calcutta University must have told him that you cannot keep two jobs, you have to either give this up or go and be the director of ISI, and I think it's quite possible. So he just was not enough. One job was not enough for this person. That's the energy I see whenever I am reading about this thing. It's not enough. So he was on the side. He was a meteorologist for the Alipur Observatory. This is the one actually which was giving the weather forecast and weather information to the West Bengal. It was advising the government of West Bengal on weather matters. And he was the general secretary for Vishwa Bharat in 1921 to 1931. And for 4 years, he was the head of the department, statistics, Calcutta University. So this is one person doing all those things. Most of us will be happy to have only one bullet in our resume, okay? I think it will be reasonably okay, but not sufficient. Okay, so as I mentioned that, so he had a lot of these extension activities. So those of us, faculty, so you have research, teaching and extension. You will see this throughout this thing and say, these are all extension activities. He was a statistical advisor to the government of West Bengal, chief statistical advisor to the government of India from 1948, and I don't think he ever actually stepped down from that position. He may have not, stopped going, but I think because none of the biography says when he ended his tenure as that. He was a member of UN Statistical Commission. I mean, this is like a international level, something like that does census. Census, the statistical agency at an international level, and he was the chairman of it for 2 years. And he was a fixture in the Indian Planning Commission from 1953. So for 14 years, he was one of the most influential people in the Planning Commission. That is why he is considered to be the architect of the second 5-year plan, right? So this is an academician being so involved with the policy, and that is one of the reasons. I think that if you compare to all his those contemporaries, he is probably closest to the government. He worked with the government and continued to work with them, even when his views strictly did not agree. He said, no, we have to work with these people. So Indian Science Congress, I think he was the general secretary, and then he was the treasurer, and I believe that Indian National Science Academy is actually another formulation of the Indian Science Congress, and I think, and he was the president of the Indian National Science Academy in 1957-58 year, okay. So this is an amazing thing, just professional only, this is professional. And I did not mention anything about his research. He published 282 papers during his tenure, 282 publications, okay. And not to mention that fundamental contributions to certain areas, which I will mention in a little bit, okay. So, okay, you want to run a poll? Okay. All right, so what do you think is the other hobby? So let us say for somebody like this, what would be a good hobby for somebody like this? What would be some of the things that he would be doing during his vacation? So what are the choices? First is some water sports. It could be sailing, motor boating, I don't know, I think what was, right? Buying Rolls Royce, I think that was a very big thing in the early 1900s in India. And B is literature. Okay, what is it saying? What is it? Everybody said 18% only? Oh, literature. So you are very close, actually. So he was in the mainstream of Bengal's cultural, social and intellectual movement. anything happening in Calcutta in this area, he is part of it. You know, his wife, he and his wife. So first of all, they were very gracious hosts. In their house, they invited people and entertained them, and they were very, very nice people, felt very comfortable. He had a way of making people very comfortable, especially the important people. And he, you know, that's one of the reasons he formed very, very strong friendship with many of these people. And so he was, of course, connected to Tagore's family, who is, you know, the giant of Bengali literature. And he edited the quarterly of Vishwabharati. In the middle of all this, he is doing editing job. You know, I cannot even imagine this. You know, when Raghavan asked me to put together this talk, for the last 3-4 days, I have actually cut down 20-25% of my other activities just to make room for this, putting together this talk. So I don't understand how he did all these things. Not only that, he found time to travel extensively with Tagore as Tagore's secretary. Because, you know, when Tagore was traveling, he needed somebody who knew how to get things done when he went somewhere. He didn't want himself. So, you know, Tagore went to South America. He has gone many, many places. He has traveled extensively. And he went with Tagore as his travel companion for almost, I think, 10 or so years, I think he has done it. He was an acknowledged authority on Tagore's work. Okay, he was an acknowledged authority. In fact, I think I'll just not bother. I can share with you, I found an article he wrote called Kavi Smriti in the 100th birth anniversary of Tagore. When Vishwabharati brought out as kind of a souvenir to commemorate 100th birth anniversary of Tagore, so they published a souvenir, and he wrote the memorial for Tagore. So that is, you know, a statistician of this stature on one side, and he's being invited to write a memorial for Tagore's birth centenary. I think that the level at which he could operate in different topics is just amazing. It's an inspiration just to think about it. So, and he wrote extensively in literary and philosophical journals, both in Bengali and English. So, just to show you the kind of interactions he has had here, I clipped some pictures. This is actually, let's see, Paul, who is sitting next to Mahalanobis in the first picture? Who is sitting next to, that's why I had to find one picture, the correct picture to make this quiz work. So option A is Patel, Vallabhbhai Patel. Option B is Nehru, and option C is other. Other is other. I don't want to mess with the other. Too easy? I made the options too easy, right? Should have thought about it a little bit. Is everybody awake or not? Okay. Not too easy? Surprisingly not too easy. So, and look at the chumminess, right? I mean, it's so close, you know. I look at this, and he is actually, he has the plan in his hand in showing to this person who is, of course, a very high ranking person in India at that time, right?
So 18 people, 60% have answered.
60% said Nehru, right? So B is Nehru, right? So that is correct answer. B is correct, right? So this is Nehru without his cap. So I had to find one picture without his cap with Mahalanobis. So I was lucky to find one. I said, okay, I'm going to clip this one. So this is Nehru, and he was actually, and so he was his right-hand person for launching the second 5-year plan. And those of you who know history, the economic history of India, you would know that second 5-year plan is when India launched its heavy industries. All the steel plants and sugar plants and those kind of things, you know, various places sprinkled all around the country actually. They strategically placed it in different states. And so India actually made a very conscious decision to put more emphasis on the government, central government itself getting into production instead of relying on private investment. So there was this is a very sort of a leaning towards socialism, if you like. I think this was a time when Nehru actually made very strong this thing push. So there is actually at that time discussion about self-reliance. That's a hot topic of this thing. Should we be, because remember that by that time Gandhi had passed away, the second 5-year plan kicked off on 1953, I believe, and so 48 Gandhi passed away. So Gandhi was very much into the self reliance, and so question of we no import, we should not import, and so on. So it turns out that the economists were not all in agreement, right? So Mahalanobis, based on this concept of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, he came up with the macroeconomic formulation for deciding what the parameters should be for the 5-year plan. Okay, this is actually one of his concrete input. And in order to do that, you have to make a series of assumptions and so on, and some of them actually turned out to be controversial. Okay, some of them turned out to be controversial. And so I think this, and Mahalanobis, I think those who knew him knew that he is not a person who will back away from a fight. He is very strong, and is a very strong personality. And so some of that, the interactions were probably not very pleasant for the people who are on the other side. And again, so he was not questioning the questioning the directions given to him from the this thing. So people who are arguing with him may be saying that, why are you not saying that? It's not a good assumption. But he's saying, no, I am actually helping the government put together this plan. I have to follow. Maybe I think that might have been his approach also. So, so this person is Niels Bohr, one of the Nobel Prize winning. Actually, Niels Bohr, I believe he has won 2 Nobel Prizes, one for physics, one for chemistry actually. And in fact, Nobel Prize has a rule saying that once you win for one subject, you cannot win for the same subject again, but it does not bar you from winning for another subject. So those of you who are listening to me, that I want to win 2 Nobel Prizes, please don't be disappointed. Just switch topic mid-career and you will be fine. Okay, so don't be disappointed. So this is Niels Bohr, and it so happens, and another trivia, Niels Bohr's grandson was my son's classmate. It turned out Niels Bohr's son, actually he is in US, he's our neighbor, and his son was my son's classmate. He came to our house many times. So in fact, another thing is that in ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, housed one of the earliest computers in India, if not the first one. So he used computers for large scale computing to help in his work for the Planning Commission. So he got this, and in fact I think 2 computers, one from England and the HEC 49 or something, and another one from Russia. So two computers I think they were housed. In the Russian computer that was still working when I went in 1977. So this is Niels Bohr again, and here is a comments. This is the first convocation of Indian Statistical Institute. Okay, this is the first convocation. Okay, I thought it was very apt to really bring it away as I was thinking and say, this is SN Bose, and that is SN Bose, and this is somebody called Alexander Kosygin from Russia, a scientist, and this is Mahalanobis, and this is, I believe, is C.R. Rao, and other people I don't recognize. Okay, so in that convocation, they gave honorary doctorate to 4 or 5 world-renowned people, including Kolmogorov, okay, Kolmogorov, who is a very well-known probabilist, R.A. Fisher, one of the greatest statisticians ever lived, S.N. Bose, and 3, and I forget, I think there are Kosygin, 4, and now I'm forgetting the 5th one. So this is and his networking. This is just a picture. I could just pull, Google Madhav has hundreds of pictures like this of him interacting with the people. This is the Indian Statistical Institute. right? This is actually, I would say, his number one contribution, founding this institute. So when he was actually running something called statistical laboratory within Calcutta University, and at some point he felt that he needed to train the students differently, right? Because he felt that statisticians had to be trained in such a way that they can actually talk to anybody from any field and help anybody with their quantitative problem. This is what he believed. So he wanted his stat students to take this course, that course, and so on, and he is in Calcutta University, and what do we have there? Rules and things like that. And he said, this is not working for me. So he said, I want to build a different institution. So he founded Indian Statistical Institute to train statisticians in this modern interdisciplinary way, right? And in fact, so in ISI curriculum, will actually right from the beginning there will be physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, anthropology, demography, like that. You have to take a course in at least one, sometimes two courses in all these subjects, in addition to a strong dose of mathematics, statistics, and economics. So mainly we studied mathematics, statistics, and economics. In addition to that, all these other subjects, at least one course. So even in anthropology, you know, students from ISI are taught some basic terminology, so that I met an anthropologist in a bus stop. You start talking about it, and immediately we will make a connection, and this is very easy to talk, right? In fact, the prospectus for the bachelor's and master's program, it describes this interdisciplinarity so beautifully. And I remember that getting that prospectus in the mail when I applied to ISI, and going over it and getting so fascinated with this idea of, you know, the interdisciplinarity, even though I didn't know the word then. I was just a 12th grader. So that is his power, you know, the way he can sell that dream. So the stamp I showed you earlier, the picture behind is the building, ISI building. This is so the stamp has this. This building is picture. So I put it back here just so that. So this is actually the emblem of ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, and you see the motto, unity in diversity, Bhinnaihi Aikyasya Darshanam, right? So that is, I don't know if this is really from Veda or not. You know, I have not checked that, but this is what it says here. Okay, I think that, so people who are at home, I am showing that emblem, Indian Statistical Institute emblem, and in the middle is written in Sanskrita, unity in diversity. Okay, so you know, the kind of things that he puts it together, you know, to bring the whole vision together. That's really what I think. This is his way of, you know, he thought of statistics as a unifying field for all the different fields of knowledge. That is how he saw, and you will see specifically. So this building is a new building. This even was built just as I was leaving, 1980s building, and a beautiful pond. And so across the pond this way, I don't have any picture of that, is the house where Mahalanobis and his wife, who was very affectionately called by everybody by Ranima. Everybody called her Ranima, okay? That was her nickname, or I don't know, but everybody called her Ranima. For a long time I didn't even know her real name. And so they lived there, and they hosted people and so on. And after he passed away, when I went there, so not too many people went there. She was still living there for some time. And only very, very select people will be going in there. There is one building we did not really go in, and even though we walked in front of that thing to the class. And just so that he will, you know, his way of doing things, that whenever a dignitary visited the ISI campus, he will have them plant a tree, and put a note saying that this is a plant, this tree was planted by R.A. Fisher. This tree was planted by Hotelling, like that. And so in the class we will be reading about all these people, and after the class we will be going, and you can say, oh, Fisher's tree. And this is, so, you know, so the way the whole message comes to you is an amazing thing to think about. So, and I think that, you know, it will say what year and so on, when they came, and those things will be written there. It's a small, it's not a plaque, it's like the thing here, so with the something stick on the ground, and it will tell the name of the person who planted it, and so on. Luckily, not written, you know, what they have done, no, just only name and the year. But we would know that, you know, so, and we will be walking with some teacher who can say, oh, and if you are a first year student who has not had a class on hoteling T-square, they say, no, you will learn it in third year, they will say, stuff like that, you know. So, that environment is incredible academic environment is engineered, as you can see. It's not an accident, because someone has thought about it and put it all together. And I think again is an inspiration for a new institution like us. We should think like that, say what people will be thinking about us in 20 to 30 years. That is how we should actually inspire ourselves. So, major contribution, I talked about, he's the founder director for Indian Statistical Institute, 1931 when it was founded, until 1972, until he passed away. He passed it on, his directorship, to a person called C.R. Rao, Kalyampudi Radhakrishna Rao, C.R. Rao. And this is a worth mentioning story, C.R. Rao. He is from, obviously, Rao, right? He is from Andhra Pradesh, right? He got his undergraduate degree from Osmania University, and he was too young to write an IAS exam. His father wanted him to write the Indian IAS exam. So, he said, too young, you had to be 18. So, he had already passed, he was a MSc first class first at 17, okay. So, he's thinking what to do. So, 1 year I had to wait. So, they said, no, you go to Calcutta. I think he had a relative in Calcutta. He said, go to Calcutta, you'll do something, go take some classes or something like that. And, you know, from Osmania those days, probably closest place to go is Calcutta, you think about Calcutta. I went there. So, there was a chance meeting. I don't exactly remember the story how he met. So, he ended up meeting Mahalanobis. And he said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm waiting for the IAS exams. What did he do? I said, I'm an MSc first class first in mathematics from Osmania University. He said, no, come on. Now I'll give you something to do. So like that is it. You know, after that he never wrote IAS exam. He is now still alive, 99 or something like that, it's nearly 100. And he is one of the best statistician ever, written hundreds of papers. I think that at one point he used to write 30 papers a year during his career, per year, not per career, okay, per year, okay. So, and he's very, very, very well known. And so he took over from the professor. That's another thing. In ISI campus, nobody else is the professor, okay, there is only a professor. The professor is that word, the professor, is reserved only for PCM. You cannot just call somebody else, the professor told me this. No, they will say, when did you talk to PCM? That's what they will say. You have to say other people, if you really insist, Professor Rao, you can say. Professor Rao is okay. Professor without any qualification is a PCM, that's it. That is a completely reserved word, nobody else can have that. So Professor Rao took over after professor. Okay? And so he founded this organization, National Statistical Survey Organization, to help with the sampling needed to collect data to help the people. Okay? And he founded this journal called Sankhya. So he had a series A, B and C, 3 series together he launched. Said A is for theory, B is for methods, C is for applications. Okay? So it's sort of like JRSS, you know, Journal of Royal Statistical Society has series A, B and C. So same structure. He is the architect, considered to be the architect for the 5-year plan. And he brought large scale computing to India with the specific applications in mind. So some of his major contributions I'll quickly go over. He is very well known for this quantity he devised. I will spend a few minutes just to show you an example in a bit. And so it's called Mahalanobis distance. In fact, Fisher
R.A. Fisher is a very well-known statistician, named it after Mahalanobis. He didn't call it himself or somebody else. Fisher said this is going to be called, he called it D2 statistic, or D square. He called it D2 statistic. Fisher said, no, I think, PCM, Mahalanobis statistics. He actually he gave a lot of concepts that is very, even today, are used for large scale sample surveys. So when you are running sampling means you don't you go and ask everybody a question. You take a random sample and you ask your questions only to a small sample in the entire population, right? Large scale means your sample size can be thousands. But before you do that, you really need to make sure that your questionnaire is right and so on. That is what these pilot surveys are doing. He said, no, you need to run a pilot survey. So he made that one like a part of the protocol. Optimal survey design, this optimization, how many data points, what should be the sample size, and so on. So those are the questions that he addressed. He came up with something called this interpenetrating network of sample. That is like, what you do is, you have, suppose you're measuring something like unemployment. So unemployment is something, the employment status changes from month to month. So what you do is, you take a sample of size 100 people from for this month. For next month, you retain a certain portion of the previous sample. You include them in your sample again. So you drop 50 people and get new 50 people. So next month's sample will have 50 people from the previous sample. So you will get a repeated measures on 50 people. So this is kind of interpenetrating. So overlap, so that you measure. So this is actually very, very important for measuring variability, right? So how does the employment status change? Because if I ask somebody, say employed this month, I don't know what they are doing next month, that is not sufficient. At the same time, I cannot keep them in my sample all the time, then I will not have enough data. So he brought this OR, operation statistics, like an objective function, maximize, minimize, those kind of thing into the macroeconomics things. So those are all for planning purposes. He developed education tests. So to test people, something like our PAT, PhD admission test, things like that. And field-based experiments. I will not go into these two bullets. Okay. So I thought that take 5 minutes and explain to you what the distance is, Mahalanobis distance, because it is the most famous one. I thought I'll pick one of them, right? So let us take a quick look at this video. I want you to see the video. So can you run this video for me, please? So in today, Mahalanobis distance is more relevant than anything else, because it is actually very crucial, crucial concept in machine learning, classifications and so on. So this distance is used. So here there is one example. Can you, run. So there are two people making vada. Can you see that? Two people making vada, right? And so once they put the vada into the oil, you can cut the volume. Okay. So once you cut the vada gets into the oil, then you don't know who made it. When you are on the other side, when the vada is done, right? Somebody gives you a vada. This guy is Ram, right? This guy is Bhim. Okay, this is their name, Ram and Bhim, and you don't know whose vada you are going to get, right? So it'll be a fun exercise to do. 10 of you are going, right? And say whether did I get Ram's vada or Bhim's vada, right? It'll be very interesting and very important sometimes, right? Because if you get it right, you may get the vada for free. So there could be a lot of riding on a very friendly bet like this, right? And in ISI, we have had many bets like this, believe me. So this is we would just do it for fun. So how do we figure this out? So is a question, right? Can we run a quick poll, right? So is the problem clear, or shall I explain again? So you may want to use this technique in your online class. Right? Many of you are saying that, the other day you were telling me that you could not see the face of your students, so you couldn't tell whether they understood what you are saying or not. Remember? Now, I don't see your face, so can you please say, did you understand? You want me to explain. If you understood, use A. If you don't understand, use B. If you don't care, use C. So let me explain again. So there are two people making vada, because they are putting into this oil thing, right? Once the vada is put in there, then you don't know who made it. You cannot keep track of it because so many vadas are coming, so you cannot keep track of it, right? So they put it, and then you are on the other side. You may not even see they are making, but even if you are paying attention, you are getting really confused also, right? After some time, and besides, who is going to think about all these things when you are hungry, right? That is another thing. So you want to tell, after looking at one vada, I want to say who made it. Did Ram make it or did Bhim make it? You want to make a guess. So what do we know? Of course, this is a statistics problem. I need data. So what I might do is go there one day when Bhim is not working. Only Ram is working. That day I eat a lot of vada and make 100 or so, take some friends, take vada and make an estimation of the size, how size is, right? And then make one histogram, right? The blue histogram is the histogram of the size of Ram's vadas. Got it? Okay? And I do the same thing another day when Bhim is only working, Ram is not working. I go there, eat another vada. See, who told you statistics is not a fun activity? So much vada you are eating, right? Just to do one problem. Okay, so Bhim is cooking only there. That day you again eat 100 vada and make a distribution of the sizes. So the red histogram is the size of the vadas of the vadas made by Bhim. Got it? Everybody? Got it? Okay. Now I have a question. Who generally makes smaller vada? Who makes? So it's a poll. We are going to run a poll. Okay? So if you think Bhim's vadas are smaller on an average, then choose A. If you think Ram's is smaller, then choose B. If you don't know, choose other. Based on this graph. You can see the graph, right? Got it? So if Ram's vadas are generally smaller, remember that there is an overlap, right? The two things are overlapping. So it is not true that all of Ram's vadas are bigger than Bhim's, right? It's not true, right? Because you cannot be a perfect like this. You are going so, there is a variability there. It's impossible to avoid, right? Got it? Okay. So now 50% are actually right? Because the pink histogram is lower than blue histogram. Pink histogram data is generally smaller than the blue histogram data. Generally, that's what this is saying. This pink histogram is smaller, right? So if I want to figure out, I have to somehow have a measure of the size of the vada, right? If the vada is smaller than some number C, the size, then I say Bhim. If it is more than C, I say Ram. Now it is not a perfect, right? Because because of the overlap, my error rate will not be 0. I will make mistake. Every once in a while, I will think that Ram has made a vada while I am enjoying Bhim's vada. It's possible. Or I will be eating Bhim's vada thinking it's not very good. In reality, it's actually Ram who made it. My favorite, perhaps, right? It's possible. Because of the overlap, there is no perfect classification system. So I know this sounds like a very simple example, but the entire classification literature falls into this category. So whenever I have some data, if I have to classify whether this belongs to group A or group B, I am only eating vada only, right? Now you see how I am excited about it. Anytime you give me a stat problem, I am always thinking about a vada problem in the back of my mind. So there is no boring stat problem for me, right? That's it. So this is the decision rule, if size is less than C. Okay, so it seems okay, alright. So now just to see what is this Mahalanobis distance is, how do we measure the size of the vada? In general, there is height, length and width. That is what Mahalanobis did. He said that you can actually define a distance that uses the variances and covariances and takes into account of the fact that the lengths are less variable than the width or height, right? Or give less weight for things that are more variable. more weight for things that are less variable. That is what the Mahalanobis distance does. This is actually why it is very widely used, especially when you have measurements that are really very incongruent. One dimension may be like for a human being, one is height measured in inches, one is weight measured in pounds or kilograms, another one is intelligence that is measured not in any particular scale that we normally use, right, or ability to jump, things like that. Those are all measured in totally different scales. So Mahalanobis distance has a way to combine all these things into a size, then applies into a classification problem like the Vada problem, okay. So I'm going to end by saying that this is what we are talking about today, Prashant Ranjan Mahalanobis, right. He is one of the most decorated scientists of India. And one thing I want to say, this is very good for us to think about, is that he got into this subject statistics when it was very, very young, right? Because 1920s is where statistics was forming, and he got attracted by that problem, and he was able to make statisticians, Indian statisticians, #1 in the world. There is no department in the world that is reasonably good and does not have an Indian statistician. Okay, that is how strong the Indian stat community is there in the world. Not a single, if an Indian statistician is not there in the department, it's probably not a great department. You can even the other way. That's how strong it is. So I think of him as a prophet because he has a way of explaining. He explains statistics to the politicians. He explains statistics to people who are, street side people. When he gave a talk in ISI or anywhere, everybody attended, even the professors from Dr. Rao, C.R. Rao, all the way to first year students. So I am going to end with this saying that, here is something, this is, Jaishankar actually drew my attention to it, then I had to really look for it. I couldn't find it easily. So he says statistics is a universal tool of inductive inference. Research in natural and social sciences and applications. Inductive inference, right? That means you estimate things that you don't see based on what you see. Inductive inference. Statistics therefore must always have purpose, either in pursuit of knowledge, right? It could be just a theoretical research, or in promotion of human welfare. If you're doing an application, that should have a human angle to it, right? So, signed, P.C. Mahalanobis.
Yeah, sir, in the very beginning itself, you mentioned that in the list of awards that he got, you mentioned that he got the Srinivasa Ramanujan Award, which is generally given to mathematicians, and PCM was not a mathematician, he was a statistician. So I have noticed that you emphasize this difference on more than one occasion in the past also. So can you tell us what is the difference? Why don't you classify a statistician as a mathematician? What is the difference between the two?
So Raghavan, thank you for giving me another homework. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that, statistics actually has many facets to it, right? So in statistics there are theorems. When I am proving theorems, I am actually applying mathematical tools only, like calculus, analysis, algebra. These are the ones that I am applying. But I think of any problem that involves randomness of some sort, right? Stochastic elements as a stat problem. That is why data analysis to me is a statistics problem, because data is not fixed, deterministic. If I go and collect the data from the person today, I may get some result. Tomorrow I'll get something else. If I measure the same quantity again and again, I'll get slightly different answers because of measurement error. So these are considered to be random. So anything that has a study of randomness in it, I think of statistics. Even though people who are doing probability, they are studying stochastic phenomena also, and I think of probability as part of statistics. So this is where the little pull is. is that mathematical statistics should be a part of mathematics or statistics? So I think that until 30s, for example, I would not think you will see a department of statistics anywhere, right? For most of the statisticians who were trained in that time, they were trained as mathematicians or physicists or economists and so on. So I think and a lot of people probably will agree, the stat type of people will make this distinction of mathematics versus statistics. So if you take a typical paper like journal like Annals of Statistics, if you just kind of flip it through, it will look like a math journal only. But the concepts discussed there, etc., will be very statistical. Now, on the other hand, there is something like principles like maximum likelihood principle, Bayesian. These things, I think, somehow calling them just mathematics seems to me is not doing full justice to its application, its context, and so on. So, I think that, if I am dealing with when we all statisticians get together, this is never debated. We all think stat is different, right? And so if there is a mathematician who is very friendly, they usually agree with us, right? If the hostile mathematician, then depending on whether we can, whether we can win the argument or not, then we choose not to argue sometimes, or we choose argue, right? So in fact, it's very interesting that National Science Foundation has a division called Division of Mathematical Sciences, okay? It's a granting agency, it's a government granting agency. And the director of that agency was a statistician last time. He has stepped down since then. And he wanted to rename it as Division of Mathematical and Statistical Sciences. And believe me, there was a lot of pushback, and it did not happen eventually. Not even as statistics, mathematical and statistical sciences, right? So that would have brought in a lot of the behavioral and so on. So anyway, I think, I feel though that the future is that math and stat will have to work a lot more together than we did in the past century. Sure.
Vani ma'am, if you would like to ask the question yourself, you can speak right now. I see that you typed your questions in the chat box.
I didn't ask whether Raghavan was satisfied with my answer or not. Ashwini?
Hari Om, sir.
Yes.
I learned that he is the founder of anthropometry. It's almost like a profiloscope, profiling, almost like our biometric profiling now. What statistical tool he may have used, whether it is Malnovis distance or any other statistical tool, we are eager to know.
So, in fact, I think the first paper he ever wrote, I believe is on, you would consider that to a paper in anthropometry, okay? What he has done in his first paper, what he did is, he collected data on Anglo-Indians living in India, in Calcutta, and their stature, height, weight, the nose length and all those things. And so he analyzed that data, and I have not read that paper, I did see it, analyzed the paper, I don't know what his conclusion were. So it was a chance meeting with somebody who was working in the anthropology area. And so the tools that he would use there are actually, Malnovis distance might be one, because there is one place, there is a good example where you have lot of different measurements with the different range and different units and those kind of things. So it's a very heterogeneous set of measurements. So he may have used it. So in general, anthropometry, Malnovis distance is a very common tools to be used. So beyond that, and I am also very uncomfortable when you make a distinction between biometry and anthropometry, because it's also biology only, but on the other hand, when you look at biometrical literature, it may have more to do with the measurements you do, like a blood pressure, physiological measurements. So biometry might be dealing more with them. But I think that kind of a distinction may be difficult to make at this level. In a class we are teaching, we can look at it more carefully. With a very broad level, it may be a very difficult distinction to make. I should also let you in on a secret. Statisticians. Statisticians have a lot of tools in their toolbox. We actually take pride in traveling with a very loaded toolbox. Just go there. And whether it is a vada pav problem or classifying people, we use the same mean, same median, same everything, right? This is actually a secret, and that's the beauty of statistics. It is one Gaussian distribution. Whether your height or weight or intelligence really doesn't matter. I am applying the same tool, right? That is actually that is the secret of statistics and its success. And to be able to be versatile with this, actually this thing. So a very expert plumber, right? He has one monkey wrench. He knows or she knows how to use it so very well, right? So I think that that is the secret. So from a statistician's point of view, a lot of these metrics are there so that the marketing goes very, very well.
All right, so we'll just take one last question and
Please.
close it.
No, it's okay.
I think Saurabh has raised his hand. Saurabh, would you like to ask it right now?
My question is very basic, just because I didn't understand something about that graph on who made my vada. So I'm assuming the x-axis on that graph referred to the size of the vadas, and I noticed that something on that axis was -1, something like that. So I didn't get that part. It is not really about Mahalanobis, I know.
Yeah, put it up. Let us see. I'll sort of very, very observant, I should say. Good job. So you're proving that the online thing is working. That's what I think. Okay, good. That's the curve, right? So I knew that somebody was going to ask, and I was not new. I was hoping somebody will ask for that. So what Saurabh is asking, to everybody else who did not have this question, Saurabh is asking about the x-axis. I said size, right? I said size. Size cannot be negative, right? But the x-axis has negative in it, right? -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Why does it have negative numbers if I am dealing with size? So, very astute observation, right? So, Saurabh, what this picture has done is sort of take all the measurements, right, and subtracted the some constant like the average size of the beams vadas, right, and subtracted that quantity from everywhere. That is why you see beams vada, the average is 0, size is 0. So you did a little translation to standardize the size so that the beam's average size is 0. So you can think of -1 is below average size, +1 is above average size relative to beams vadas, and this 2 is 2 units above average compared to beams. So you will see on an average, Ram's vada average is 3 units more than beams vada size, average size, right? So the difference between the two averages is 3, right? So that's what we did for convenience, and it's a very common trick in analyzing data, because when you're doing a lot of different things, we will just take one as kind of the sort of the standard and you subtract up and down. And for most of this analysis, it doesn't really matter. I can either deal with this translated data or original data. I will be able to make the appropriate transformation. Thank you very much. That is thanks for noticing it. I was wondering whether anybody will notice or not.
All right. Thank you, sir. I think we'll close right now. So thank you, Nagaraj, for such an informative session on a pioneer in the field of statistics, especially Indian statistics. And I'm sure all of us learned a lot about a person most of us probably hadn't heard of before. And it's a wonderful way of marking his birthday as well as National Statistic Day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you everyone for joining in and staying for so long, even though we have exceeded the time allotted by a few, more than a few minutes. Thank you so much. We'll close, sir, with the Shanti Mantra.
And if any of them are so inspired to send us all vada, we'll be very happy.
Okay, I am sure you heard all of that. We're really sorry that we only showed videos of vada and we could not do it non-virtually. But if you are happy, please have vada and think of us also. Yes, yes. We'll close with the Shanti Mantra. Thank you.
पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ओम् श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम्